We begin high above the European continent, where the sky stretches endlessly, painted with soft, cotton-like clouds. It's a vista of profound peace, a tableau of tranquility that belies the tragedy about to unfold. On this crisp March afternoon, an ordinary international journey commenced. A routine flight departing from Paris. No one on board, nor anyone watching from the ground, could possibly conceive that this specific journey, Turkish Airlines Flight 981, would etch itself into the annals of aviation history as one of its most devastating and shocking disasters. A stark reminder of vulnerability. The date was March 3rd, 1974. Turkish Airlines Flight 981, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, was scheduled. A flight from Istanbul, Turkey, to London, England, with an intermediate stop at Orly Airport in Paris. This seemingly mundane route was part of the everyday ballet of global travel, connecting distant cities and bringing people closer. But beneath the veneer of normalcy lay a deeply flawed design, a ticking time bomb embedded within the aircraft itself, ready to detonate at the cruelest of moments, forever altering the lives of hundreds. Our focus turns to the marvel of engineering that was the McDonnell Douglas DC-10. This tri-jet wide-body aircraft represented the cutting edge of aviation technology in its era, a symbol of progress and human ingenuity. Its massive structure, designed to carry hundreds across vast distances, housed spacious cabins and intricate cargo compartments. Yet within this sophisticated machine resided a critical design, a choice that would prove fatal: its innovative, outward-opening rear cargo door. This cargo door, a pioneering feature intended to maximize cargo,
Watch your feet
space,
there.
and streamline loading, operated on a principle different from most aircraft. Instead of
Heavy one
opening
coming
inwards,
through.
where cabin pressure helps seal, the DC-10's door swung outwards. This design required a robust locking mechanism to withstand the immense pressure differentials at high altitudes. It was a concept born of efficiency, yet one that, through a series of subtle failures, held the potential for catastrophic consequences, a silent vulnerability waiting for the right conditions to manifest its deadly flaw. Unsettlingly, this particular aircraft, registered TCJAV and named Ankara, was no stranger to cargo door incidents. Archival records reveal a chilling precursor to the impending disaster. Just months prior, in June 1972, this very DC-10 had experienced a partial cargo door failure during a flight from Detroit. The incident, while not catastrophic, served as a potent, undeniable warning sign, a severe tremor before the earthquake. The crew managed to land safely,
The
but the
hydraulic
message
line
was
on the
clear
drawing
and
is
stark.
routed
The
differently
design
than the
harbored a
installation.
profound danger,
That
despite the
explains the stress
explicit
fracture
warnings
we
from the
found
previous
earlier.
incident, where the cargo door had partially opened mid-flight due to a faulty latching mechanism. The severity of the problem was tragically underestimated. Investigations followed, and modifications were suggested, but the implementation was piecemeal, and the core vulnerability remained unaddressed. A culture of expedience often overshadowed prudence, leading to a false sense of security. The red flags were not just ignored. They were effectively waved away, setting the stage for an inevitable and far more devastating repeat performance. The bustling Orly Airport in Paris on that fateful March 3rd, 1974, presented a typical scene of international travel. Passengers arrived, their faces alight with anticipation, some hurrying, others embracing loved ones in heartfelt goodbyes. The air hummed with the murmur of multiple languages, the clatter of luggage, and the distant roar of jet engines. There were no alarms blaring, no ominous premonitions of crisp Parisian air, just the ordinary rhythm of life, people embarking on journeys, their futures momentarily intertwined by a single flight number, THY 981. For many, on board, this leg of the journey was merely a stopover, a brief interlude before continuing to their final destination of landing. Business. Travelers,
405
families
to
returning
Mexico
home,
City is
students on
now
holiday,
pre-boarding.
all converged
Please
at
have
Gate
your documents
8,
ready.
oblivious to the grim fate
Okay,
awaiting.
that's our flight.
The airport, a hub of human connection and departure, offered no hint of the impending catastrophe. It was a day like any other, a clear sky, efficient operations, and a plane waiting to whisk its occupants away. The banality of the departure masked the extraordinary horror that lay just moments ahead. A total
Welcome
of
aboard.
346 passengers
Please make your way
and
down the
10
aisle.
crew members,
Thank you.
356 souls in all, began to board the majestic McDonnell Douglas DC-10. The cabin slowly filled, with a
Excuse me,
vibrant
is this
tapestry
seat
of
taken?
humanity.
No, please, plenty
Students
of
from
room.
Japan, British families,
Mind your step
Turkish
with that
business
case.
travelers, and an array of international citizens, each carrying their own stories, hopes, and destinations. The overhead bins clicked shut, seat belts fastened, and the quiet hum of the aircraft. Preparing for departure replaced the earlier airport chatter. A collective sense of anticipation settled over the cabin, a serene prelude to the unthinkable. Conversations blossomed and
they
faded.
look like cotton
Magazines were
balls.
They
opened,
certainly
and children
do.
pointed
I
excitedly
just need
out
to
the
tuck this
windows.
bag away.
The cabin crew moved
Pull
through
the
the
mask
aisles,
towards
conducting
you,
safety
place
checks,
it firmly
their
over your
smiles
nose and mouth,
reassuring.
and
For
breathe
everyone
normally.
aboard, this was a familiar
Secure the
ritual, a
strap behind your
routine
head.
transition. From land to sky, no one could have imagined that in just a few short minutes, the very air they breathed, the cabin walls around them, and the ground far below would transform from a symbol of connection to a scene of unimaginable devastation, an abrupt end to all their journeys. Meanwhile, beneath the passenger deck, the ground crew diligently loaded baggage into the aircraft's rear cargo hold. This critical area, housing the problematic outward opening door, was a hive of activity. Suitcases, mail, and other freight were carefully stowed. The procedure was standard, practiced countless times before. As the final pieces were loaded, the crew member responsible moved to secure the notorious cargo door, a seemingly simple act that held the very balance of fate for everyone on Flight 981. The design of the DC-10's cargo door latching system was inherently flawed. It relied on a series of C-shaped latching hooks that pivoted to engage pins in the door frame. A small vent door, connected to an indicator light in the cockpit, was supposed to close only when all latches were fully secured. However, it was possible for the vent door to appear closed and the cockpit light to indicate locked, even if the latches were not perfectly engaged, creating a deceptive illusion of security. On this particular day, despite the visual cues, the locking mechanism for the rear cargo door was not fully engaged. The pressure toggles, meant to force the latches into place and provide a secure seal, had not moved completely into their overcenter. Lock position. Mechanical integrity required to withstand the immense forces of flight was dangerously absent, a silent betrayal of design. With all passengers boarded and cargo secured, or so it seemed, Flight 981 received clearance for departure. The powerful engines of the DC-10 roared to life, a symphony of raw power and contained energy. The massive aircraft taxied slowly towards the runway, a colossal bird preparing for its ascent. The tension of waiting gave way to the thrill of motion as the plane aligned itself,
Airspeed alive.
poised at the precipice of its journey. The moment of truth, the culmination of countless preparations, was at hand. With a final surge of power, Flight 981 began its thunderous takeoff and rolled down the runway at Orly Airport. Speed built rapidly, the sensation of acceleration pressing passengers back into their seats. The nose wheel lifted, then the main landing gear, and the colossal aircraft gracefully detached itself from the earth. It climbed smoothly, gaining altitude with each passing second, piercing through the clear Parisian sky, a vision of modern aviation, completely unaware of the cataclysmic event just minutes away. As the DC-10 ascended, the engines continued their powerful thrust, pushing the aircraft higher and faster through the atmosphere. The altimeter spun upwards, indicating their steady climb towards cruising altitude. At approximately 11,000 feet, a critical threshold was being approached. Inside the sealed cabin, air pressure was meticulously maintained for passenger comfort, creating a significant differential with the thinning air outside. This internal pressure began to build, exerting immense outward force on every surface of the fuselage, especially on points of structural weakness. The outward opening cargo door, despite its deceptive appearance of being locked, was now under tremendous strain. The cabin's internal pressure, constantly increasing with altitude, pressed against the door surface. The flawed latching mechanism, not fully engaged, was the weakest point in the entire structure, a tiny imperfection now facing immense, unforgiving forces. The metal groaned, imperceptibly at first, then with increasing stress, as the inevitable moment of failure drew terrifyingly close, a silent countdown to disaster. Then, without warning, at precisely 11,800 feet, an apocalyptic sound ripped through the aircraft. A deafening blast, like an explosion, tore through the rear of the cabin. It was an explosive decompression, an instantaneous equalization of the massive pressure differential between inside and outside of the aircraft. The force was unimaginable, an instantaneous rupture of the delicate balance that kept the aircraft whole, shattering the serene flight into an abyss of horror. In a fraction of a second, the rear cargo door blew outwards with unimaginable violence, tearing away from the fuselage as if it were mere paper. The rapid depressurization caused a massive structural failure. The cabin floor, directly above the cargo hold, collapsed instantly under the sudden vacuum, ripping seats, passengers, and debris downwards into the gaping void. A section of the floor, along with 6 passenger seats and their occupants, was ejected from the aircraft into the cold, thin air. A brutal testament to the destructive power of the air. The atmosphere inside the cabin transformed from controlled serenity to chaotic terror. Oxygen masks deployed automatically, but for many, it was too late. The air was filled with a roaring wind, shrieking metal, and the terrified cries of those witnessing the horror unfold. The integrity of the aircraft was fundamentally compromised, its once solid structure now a twisted, torn shell. This single, cataclysmic event set in motion an irreversible chain of failures that would seal the fate of everyone aboard. The explosive decompression did more than just tear a hole in the fuselage. It severed the aircraft's lifelines. Crucial flight control cables, running directly beneath the cabin floor and above the cargo hold, were ripped apart in a violent collapse. These cables, made of high-strength steel with a pilot's direct connection to the aircraft's control surfaces, the elevators, rudder, and ailerons. Their instantaneous destruction rendered the aircraft critically crippled, a massive machine suddenly without a central nervous system. Within mere seconds of the blast, the pilots in the cockpit discovered a horrifying truth. They had lost all control over the elevators and rudder. These are the fundamental controls for pitching the aircraft up or down and for yawing it left or right. Without them, the DC-10 became an uncontrolled projectile at the mercy of aerodynamic forces. The pilot's skilled hands, once capable of guiding this behemoth through the skies, were now uselessly grasping at controls that offered no response. A terrifying void where command
Maintain
should have
airspeed.
been.
Don't
In the
let it
cockpit,
stall.
the scene erupted into an inferno of chaos. Alarms shrieked incessantly, their piercing wails echoing the terror unfolding outside. Instruments flickered wildly, then died, plunging the control panel into disorienting darkness and confusion. The pilots, Captain Nejat Burkaz and First Officer Oral Yalusman, along with Flight Engineer Erhan Azer, found themselves in a desperate struggle against an enemy they could not see, fighting to save it. Aircraft that was no longer obeying their commands. The captain, a seasoned pilot with thousands of hours of flight experience, instinctively fought the controls, pushing and pulling on the yoke stomping on the rudder pedals. But the aircraft remained unresponsive, its nose pitching. Down violently, then oscillating erratically. The direct mechanical links to the control surfaces were gone, leaving only slack cables and the horrifying realization that their mighty aircraft was now merely a falling object, a giant metallic coffin plummeting from the sky. Bereft of control, the DC-10, weighing hundreds of tons, entered a steep, uncontrolled dive. The once smooth trajectory transformed into a terrifying descent, accelerating rapidly towards the earth below. The aircraft's airspeed soared to extreme levels, exceeding its design limits, straining every remaining part of its reconstruction. The screams from the cabin were now mixed with the roar of the wind and the tearing of metal. A cacophony of impending doom. Despite the pilot's valiant, desperate attempts to regain some semblance of control, no recovery was possible. The aerodynamic forces on the damaged airframe, combined with the loss of critical control surfaces, rendered any maneuver futile. The aircraft tumbled, pitched, and rolled, shedding parts as it plummeted, a tragic testament to the irreversible damage inflicted by the explosive. Decompression. The ground rushed up to meet them with terrifying speed, an inescapable rendezvous with destiny. Just minutes after the explosive decompression, the colossal aircraft, Turkish Airlines Flight 981, slammed into the dense Ermenonville forest, a serene woodland. Located north of Paris, the impact was cataclysmic, a thunderous roar heard for miles around. The DC-10 disintegrated on contact, its massive structure shattering into hundreds of thousands of fragments across a wide area. Trees were splintered, and the forest floor was scarred beyond recognition by the sheer force of the collision. The devastation was absolute. There were no survivors among the 346 passengers and 10 crew members. The force of the impact was so immense that rescue workers have later described the scene as a battlefield. The wreckage so final, fragmented that identifying victims proved an agonizing, almost impossible task. Flight 981 had simply ceased to exist, its journey ending in a maelstrom of metal and earth, leaving behind only the shattered remains of human lives and a profound silence. As news of the crash spread, emergency responders rapidly converged on the Ermenonville forest. The air filled with the wail of sirens, and the sound of helicopters broke.
We've got a hot spot over there by the
firefighters,
ridge. Get the line
police,
moving.
and medical teams began the grim task of searching the wreckage site. They quickly realized the horrific scale of the catastrophe. What they encountered was not just a plane crash, but an almost complete pulverization, a scene of destruction that defied immediate comprehension. The sheer expanse of the debris field, stretching for miles through the ancient forest, immediately indicated the severity of the accident. The absence of large, identifiable sections of the aircraft, combined with the realization that no survivors could possibly exist amidst such devastation, confirmed the worst fears. The rescue effort quickly transitioned into a recovery operation,
Looks like a
a
partial
somber
print.
search for answers amidst the
I'll
shattered
document it.
remnants of what was once Flight 981.
What's the
Within
grid
hours,
reference?
a team of
The
international
impact trajectory
aviation
suggests a
investigators,
steep descent.
led by French
I'm noting the
authorities,
scorch marks on this
arrived at the
hemlock.
crash site.
We should find
Their
the
primary
cockpit data
objective
recorder
to
nearby.
uncover the cause of this unimaginable disaster. Amidst the scattered debris, the search for the aircraft's black boxes, the flight data recorder, and the cockpit voice recorder was paramount. These vital instruments held the key to understanding the final moments of Flight 981, capturing crucial data. In conversations from flight deck, miraculously, both black boxes were recovered
Did you
from the
recover
wreckage,
the remains?
remarkably
Are you
intact
releasing a
given the
statement?
severity of the impact.
All evidence
the data they
points to
contained
this
would be
area,
invaluable.
Sampathus.
However,
The
even
satellite
before their
imagery
analysis,
confirms the debris
early
scatter
observations
right
of the
here.
crash site provided a chilling clue. The rear cargo door of the DC-10 was found almost a dozen miles away from the main wreckage, scattered over an agricultural field. This immediate discovery unequivocally turned the attention of investigators to the problematic cargo door design.
We need more samples.
The subsequent investigation meticulously pieced together the sequence of events, revealing the fatal design flaw at the heart of the DC-10 cargo door. Experts meticulously examined the wreckage, the recovered door, and the aircraft's maintenance records. Their findings were unambiguous. The outward opening cargo door, with its flawed latching system, created a critical vulnerability. The design allowed the door to appear securely closed and the cockpit indicator to show locked, even when the C-shaped latches were not fully engaged. The design of the door's locking mechanism incorporated a small vent flap intended to block the cockpit warning light if the door was not fully secured. However, this system was susceptible to being bypassed. The pressure toggles designed to force the latches into an over-center lock position could be bent or forced, making it seem as though the door was secure when it was not. This fatal deception allowed a catastrophic failure to occur under the stresses of altitude and cabin pressure, an unforgivable oversight. Perhaps the most damning revelation to emerge from the investigation was the fact that McDonnell Douglas, the manufacturer, had been warned about this specific design flaw years earlier. Documents surfaced showing a memo written by a company engineer outlining the exact scenario that led to the Flight 981 disaster. These dire warnings, however, were tragically ignored or downplayed. The immense pressure of production deadlines and the desire to minimize costs often outweighed critical safety concerns. The economic implications of redesigning and retrofitting the entire DC-10 fleet were enormous. This financial consideration, combined with the perceived low probability of such a catastrophic failure, led to a tragic complacency. The lessons from the previous cargo door incident on this very aircraft were not fully absorbed or acted upon with the urgency required. It was a stark example of how corporate priorities, when misaligned with safety, can have devastating, irreversible consequences, etching a grim lesson in aviation history. In the immediate aftermath of the Flight 981 disaster, the global aviation community reacted with shock and profound concern. The implications of such a catastrophic structural failure, especially one linked to a known
flew
design
on one of
flaw,
those last week.
were immense. Airlines around the world facing public outcry and the irrefutable evidence from the crash took the unprecedented step of grounding their entire McDonnell Douglas DC-10 fleets. This drastic measure underscored the gravity of the situation, a recognition that the aircraft, in its current configuration, was simply too dangerous to fly. Regulatory bodies demanded immediate and significant design changes. McDonnell Douglas was compelled to implement a comprehensive redesign of the cargo door latching system,
slides forward,
ensuring multiple
by the
redundant
double
locking
lock,
mechanisms that could not be
secure
falsely
connection.
indicated as secure. These mandated modifications included vent doors that physically prevented closure if the latches weren't properly engaged, and stronger, more reliable mechanisms. The grounding was a necessary, albeit costly, intervention to prevent future tragedies. The disaster of Turkish Airlines Flight 981 irrevocably altered the landscape of aviation safety. It served as a stark, undeniable catalyst for a profound reevaluation of aircraft design and certification processes. New, rigorous safety regulations were swiftly introduced globally, making redundant locking systems not merely a suggestion, but an absolute mandatory requirement for all cargo doors in modern aircraft. The incident highlighted the paramount importance of fail-safe designs and independent verification. As we return to the quiet majesty of the sky, where aircraft continue to soar with unparalleled safety, the legacy of Flight 981 endures. It was not merely a random accident, but a profound, albeit brutal, lesson written in the lives of 346 souls lost. Their tragic fates served as a constant, somber reminder that in the intricate world of aviation, every single detail, every design choice, every maintenance check, every warning holds immeasurable significance. Safety is not a luxury. It is the absolute foundation of flight, a vigilance that must never, ever falter.